Peace. You're tuned into the Edible Activist Podcast. I am your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we feed you empowering narratives and perspectives from the voices of emerging Black people and people of color in food and agriculture who are stewarding the land, healing communities, and advocating for food justice and economic power across the globe. Our rich contributions and stories exemplify the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist. I am your host, Melissa L. Jones, coming at you with another episode. I am super excited because I have a very special guest today with me. But I just wanted to say also hello, y'all. Thank you all for tuning in. As a reminder, you can find these episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and also YouTube. So make sure to tap in. Also, be sure to follow me at Food Talks in Color on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So that is Food Talks with just the letter N in color on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, I have a very special guest in studio with me today, and her name is Brittney Bell Surratt. And so I actually learned of Brittney through a very amazing article that someone put me on to in Sweet July. And if some of you aren't familiar with Sweet July, it's actually an online publication that is founded by Aisha Curry. Okay, so shout out to the Currys. All right, but I was just really amazed when I read Brittney's story, and that Brittney is from Mississippi, and she is let me go back. Brittney is a senior director of storytelling and communications, but she's also now a farmer. And so her family actually has about 50 acres of land, but there's a whole story behind this because at one point, you know, the family land had experienced some challenges. Back in 2021, I believe there was a freeze, some huge weather challenges, and the farm was in jeopardy. And so Brittney, you know, who is part of the family legacy and making sure that she was sustaining the family legacy, came to the rescue and now has transitioned over while still, you know, working in communications to become a farmer. And so I am just excited to have her here so that you all can hear her story from her. And just excited to have a dialogue with you, Brittney. So welcome to Edible Activist.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Brittney, when I read your story, I was just in awe and just in admiration, to be truthfully honest, because for me, I'm looking at, you know, a professional mom, wife, has so many things on her plate, but also this story of wanting to save her family's legacy and continue her family's legacy. And so I'm going to assume, but I don't want to make any assumptions, that this is something that you probably didn't see coming. No. But you tell me.
No, didn't see it coming. So as a kid, we were always into things that had to do with farming, cattle, horses. I used to show horses as a kid. And so I did that for a couple of years, and then kind of just lost that once my father was incarcerated for a bit. And then just going into being a teenager and just being into really just trying to get into college, hang with friends and boys. So I always thought that one of my brothers, either my younger brother or my youngest brother or my oldest brother, would kind of take the farm interest the most seriously. And I'd just be able to go and play with my little family or friends when they come in. And that just didn't work out quite that way for a number of reasons. And not that we won't still be able to do something family-oriented at some point, but I think for the time and the opportunity, it was just ripest for me at the moment.
Yeah. So take us back to was it 2021. I might have said 2001 or 2000. Forgive me, y'all. Not correct. But 2021, where the farm had, and I actually remember this. There was a freeze in Mississippi, and your dad, who is, managing the farm and was managing the farm at that time, no water.
Nope.
The only form of communication was relying on snail mail. Right. And so the farm and land was at jeopardy.
Correct. So, yeah, my dad was without water for a couple of weeks. He was without electricity for a couple of weeks. And even without those things, he just doesn't have internet. Right now, with full water and electricity, he doesn't have internet. He has a little flip phone that he uses that we can be on the top of Mount Everest and gets reception. And that's it. And so during that freeze, there was this bustling farm that had horses, chicken, turkey, goats, hogs, dove, what's the big with the big peacock, and cattle. And so it was, I liken it to very old McDonald had a farmish, just so much life on that farm. And during that freeze, it's already deep south. Mississippi is in use, doesn't have the infrastructure for that type of devastation. It was unseasonably cold, and in addition to losing utilities, how that affects the loss of life with everything being outside, with all those animals being outside. And so it was painful, one, to see majority of that. I literally had just December of 2020 did a photo shoot there with all of that, and then for February 2021 to come and to have all of that devastation, and then to add insult to injury. And I know you've talked about this in your podcast before with different folks, and it's just a tale that Black people have, particularly in the South, is how the USDA doesn't provide, goes out of their way not to provide support. And so what got me angry was that the USDA told my dad about relief coming right upon the deadline for it. And they told him that he had to have a veterinarian come out. Now weeks have passed. A veterinarian to come out, and that veterinarian had to verify the cause of death for those animals. And at that point, one, they're carcasses now. They have been discarded. But then two, even if this was right in the nick of time, who's going to pay for the vet to come out and to do that, right? And so it just seeing the kind of regular systemic things with the USDA didn't seem by accident, and it brought up a few things in that not only should the USDA be more vigilant about getting information to people, one, in rural areas, two, this older population. My dad is in his 70s. But three, providing some type of financial support for if you do have to go the route of having a vet come out or something like that. And so because he was unable to fulfill that, it was just a loss. And that didn't sit well within my spirit or my soul. So then it became I can't just sit on something and be bothered. You know what I mean?
Right.
What can I do? How can I help? I just immediately go into, okay, what are the solutions here? How can I do my part? And that's just in anything. And so that's how we got to where, I eventually started going through kind of the processes to have ownership.
Wow. I want to give folks just a snippet, and I encourage you all to, and I'm going to include the link to the Sweet July article, because I want the audience to be able to read that, but just to give you more lay of the land or more context, if you will. So Brittney's grandfather acquired land in the 1940s in Mississippi, in Fayette,
Mississippi.
Fayette, Mississippi. I ain't never been.
Jefferson County. It's about 20 minutes from Alcorn State.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Shout out Alcorn. And then your dad has been helping to maintain that land all these years, but also in addition to that, had purchased some other land nearby that became available, right? Yeah. And so your dad had been farming full time, but was also an educator at some point too. So we're talking a lot of land, about 50 acres of land here, combined. And I know this is, we'll get to the land where you are and that you've been transitioning or have transitioned to as a farmer. And so I just think it was really important to provide some of that context because, listen, no discredit, land is land, but we're talking about masses of land here and really something. And I remember that year when that freeze happened. And so, yes, it affected rural areas and it affected a lot of folks because Mississippi is not used to that. Yeah, they're not used to that, and just the climate. But anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole we can go down. So, but I just wanted to provide it. I just wanted to provide folks that context just so they can understand the amount of land that we're working with, and that this was like an operation in your family's, legacy and livelihood. And your dad even built a house, you all, on the farm. So
with his own hands, it's wild.
Oh my
It's wild what that generation.
I'm trying to tell you. We got to hold on to every bit of it as much as we can, man. They were just built different. I say that all the time, the time. So this is happening. You're in DC. And, DCing as we'll say. And so this all happens. And so now you're in the mode of like, no, I got to help my dad. I got to make sure that we save this farm. We can't lose it. I need to go into, it's go mode. What was that transition like from here to Mississippi and now literally having to put on a farmer's hat?
Yeah. So one of the benefits of being in the pandemic was the ability to work remotely. And so I think a couple of things that the pandemic brought on was just a renewal of the importance of being able to spend time with family.
Yes.
And so in addition to, I had just some personal things going on to where being able to just go home to Mississippi and stay there for a few weeks, I just leaned into whenever I had the chance to do that. And so after the freeze happened and all of that loss of life happened, I just wanted to, it really started off with, let me learn a bit more about what it takes or what it took you as in my dad, to sustain, that level of upkeep for all of those different types of animals. Because I didn't, sometimes people are doing something and it's just what they do, and they do it so effortlessly you don't even, start to think like, oh, this really requires a lot.
And they not writing no books, because this was their livelihood. This is what they did. Yeah. So it wasn't like you were able to open up a pamphlet and this was the how-to.
None of that. Not writing anything down. But when you no longer have it, then for me there was that additional interest in it. Yeah. And so we started with what the animals that were left, which were a couple of cattle. A lot of cattle died, but it was a couple of cattle, and we had 3 horses left. And so my familiarity with the horses, I could tap back into, was like I told you earlier, I used to show horses when I was young. I was a kid. But the cattle, I knew nothing about. I didn't know about the different types, the different types of beef, the different types of dairy, the different, the different types of grass they eat to do this or do that. And so we started there. And as I started to learn more, and then started to see what financially what that loss was like.
Yeah.
And so, my dad would go to the trades during the week and auctions and sales and whatnot, and that was a stream of income for him. And so to lose that, and then that was the kind of the light bulb that went off. It's like, okay, I am comfortable in resources in which I could take this on, and talking to him about the ins and outs of the business aspect. So there was, these months of just learning about the technical parts of being on a farm and what it takes and what a day looks like. And but then it started to bleed into, okay, what does the business looks like, the administrative piece, the financial pieces of running a farm. And so being here, and, I'm very country at heart for sure. But I've been in DC for 20 years now. So I'm kind of a DC gal at this point, like just, how I operate. To your point, what you had said about, DCing. And so it was what could I do and how could I support? And so taking over financially and administrative wise was like, okay, this is what I can do, and just let daddy, continue to do what he does as far as, toiling the land, and raising the different animals and coming to a point where we can rejuvenate that land again, was important that he could still do that. So then we got into, land ownership, transfer, what is the proper paperwork to go through to be a registered farmer. And one of the things I didn't want to happen, because there's a technological divide, gap, loss that happens with rural people, that happens with elderly people. And so, I work on a lot of climate issues and absolutely believe that we should be reducing our paper and reducing our carbon footprint and reducing our waste. But these institutions and these organizations, they have the resources, the infrastructure, the capital to figure out how to reach these people. These people cannot get left behind. And so part of that is me filling in the gap. Like, I get all the emails now. I'm checking all, making sure that we don't miss anything when they have surveys, when they have, assessments, when they have different opportunities for grants and whatnot. But that some kind of way, somebody should be getting that information to my dad.
Yeah.
So
that is very important. It is that technical assistance and the admin support that is needed. And the fact that you are able to serve in the position to receive that information on behalf of your dad and for your dad is huge, is really huge. And so you made several great points. One of the things I wanted to go back to, well, first of all, so with the USDA, did any financials come out of it for your dad?
He hasn't yet. Now there's some new grants that had or financial assistance that is available for folks now from that freeze, and that just came out that communication just came out within the last 45 days. I'll be in Mississippi this week, and we'll probably take him to the local USDA office or have him come to my mom's house, so we can kind of go through that paperwork online. But no, as of April 2023, no,
y'all.
It's been 2 years, and he still has yet to get any kind of financial compensation or anything for the loss.
The good old USDA, another rabbit hole we can go down, but not today. You have to register to become, there's a thing to register that you're a farmer. I was never aware of that.
You have to be a registered farmer, particularly to get anything with the USDA. And so what one of the place I work with, the organization is Hip Hop Caucus, and prior to me coming on, they have a podcast called The Coolest Show, which I have to talk to the producer, see if you can come on when we have our food.
I think I have a homie who's been on the show. I think, but we'll
probably.
talk. Yeah.
But yes, on The Coolest Show, they had John Boyd from the National Black Farmers Association on, and he talked about how USDA were the gatekeepers between farms who can have like their dairy, meat, plant products in the stores and not, right? So a lot of things have to be USDA, approved, stamped, all of that. And so part of doing that is being a registered farmer through the USDA.
Interesting. Now, with the transfer of the deed, I am very interested to dive into that a bit, because it was maybe 2 episodes ago. So shout out to Filani Spivey at Bird's Nest Box. Her and I had a really great conversation a couple episodes ago about keeping and sustaining family land. And one of the things that she brought up a really great point in that, when we talk about land loss, we're always talking about it from the perspective of, land being stolen from us and eminent domain, which that has happened. And a lot of our land has been stripped away from us, due to those reasons named. But the biggest thing is, the biggest and unfortunate thing is the internal family conflict that tends to go down around family land. And I have had my own personal experiences. Filani is going through the same thing. And so it's like I said, I think the episode was nobody wins when the family feuds over land. And to me, that's just really just what it is, right? And so there's some education around the transfer of deeds, right? But I don't think it's a whole lot when it comes to Black family land ownership. And we get lost in who has the deed? Because I'm going to tell you, Britt, I done seen about 2 deeds for a piece of land in particular in Mount Island, Mississippi. And Big Mom got a deed, the cousin got a deed, and we just we don't know which one is the actual deed, right? And I know there are hundreds and thousands of these stories, right? So I am just interested in what that process was and what you learn from that, because maybe that can help someone, as they're going through the process, as they are researching the process, which I know isn't easy. I know for me it hasn't been. But I definitely just want to lift that up for a few moments, if you can speak on that, because I think that's important.
Yeah. So both of my parents, I give a lot of just credit to for being organized and on top of just administrative things that come with owning land, owning property, what's going to happen, after their deaths. And they don't have this type of expertise that some people have, but they have these conversations, especially with me, about business affairs, of the things that they have. And so that transfer, that deed transfer wasn't a complicated process. I think a lot of times people just don't know. And so, my dad learned things from when his father passed. My mother learned things from when her godfather passed. And so I think that they just take their experiences and, try to be more proactive and share them with me. For this transfer, it was literally just having basically a map of the parcels of land and what the acreage was. And signing the back of that and filing it in the court.
Good for you.
In the local court. That was it. And, I think what gets lost is just a relay relaying of information, where something is located and how to properly document it with the government.
Yeah.
And I know there is absolutely, and for good reason, a lot of folks are hesitant about that. You know how you meet some people who won't put their money in the bank still, or, you know, they won't file different things with the court for X, Y, and Z reason. Thankfully, that's not, you know, our case. So my parents have been very forthcoming about what they have and how to maintain it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's beautiful. And shout out to your parents, because, you know, there are some stories, you know, like that, and there are many others that it's, you know, that aren't. And it causes it can cause a lot of conflict, which I'm sure you're familiar with just with other, you know, Black folks and you know, maybe have inherited land or, you know, would like to, or, so it's definitely, it's a topic that I want to dive more into, and it can get really sticky.
Yeah. I mean, but people have to be realistic, right? It's always something when you have Uncle Johnny who hasn't visited grandma in 20 years, but feels like when she passed, like he's owed 5 acres or whatever. Like, you know, if it ever came down to it, you know, I would always be willing to just kind of hold up for decisions that my parents have made, but also the initiative that I've taken, that others have not taken, for whatever reason, right? So I think there has to be some type of balance between, you know, having just kind of empathy for somebody who wants, you know, X, Y, and Z, for somebody who may want it, may not have the capacity, or somebody who wants it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that. Well, and here's the thing, like, you know, you all have 50 acres of land, and you, I'm assuming, plan to keep it in the family as long as you know, can, and, you know, pass it on to the next generation. And so I think the other thing is that we have, you know, some families who just want to just sell it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can't discredit anybody for their decisions, but the fact that we Black folks had so much of it, and then it was taken away from us, and then the continuation of giving it to, you know, these corporations, and it's just,
Did you ever talk about the beach people in California?
No.
The people who they had won the beachfront property land back, and then sold it for like $10 million back to them.
No. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's wild and disheartening, and, you know, and to your point, like, I get it, right? Like, we don't have a lot of extra, you know, capital, and so if I can sell land and get a few tens of thousands, or maybe I get $1 million real quick, it feels like a lot, versus, you know, what it can mean generations to come.
Exactly.
You know, you see somebody come through, like I think you were talking about, there was the reservoir that came, or somebody comes and maybe Amazon wants to build on their, you know, a plant or whatever on that land, and the residual that you could possibly get and how it can set you up. A lot of times we just don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that, you know, that process for you, you know, was smooth, and I still think it's encouraging to those who might be in a similar situation. But I think the biggest lesson out of this, and a reminder, is like documentation, and just making sure that your records are as organized as possible. I remember a family member just showing me slips of paper. I was just sitting there like nodding my head like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. Like, it was such a mystery. I won't even go there. I done been down that rabbit hole. We'll revisit on another cousin chat. But it was very interesting. So Brittney, now you're in this space, and, you know, you're a farmer. Oh my gosh. How does that, like, you are a farmer. Does that still like Has that settled in with you? Like, yes, you are. Has that?
I think I don't know if it settled in. Like, because when I went, speaking of the USDA office, when I went to register and file out my paperwork and talk with the I guess the USDA agent there or whatever, she looked at me and she was like, "Is this paperwork for you? You don't look like a farmer." And she was like,
gosh.
"Yeah." She started naming like the shoes I had on, and this and the other, and I think what excites me, I just in general, about some of the different ventures I've taken on, some of the spaces that I've been able to occupy, is that a lot of times I will break a mold of what you thought, like whether I was coming from Mississippi to Howard and what you thought a Mississippi girl was like, whether it's, sometimes I've been in different spaces just in my career, whether it's been Hollywood or the White House, and what you thought a black woman from the South, how they used to show up, whatever. So being in this farming space, I think I'm absolutely excited to just, put a spin on what you thought it should look like, but also what you think is capable. So, there is a minimal, I think, from my standpoint, investment on what monthly, how I'm invested in that farm, but what it's like to be able to start to see. We just had a calf that was born last week. So started to be able to see, life coming back. Yeah. My dad was able to plant some new grass and clear some land that, was just a challenge before. And so it means a lot to be able to do that and just kind of spin perception a little bit on its head.
Wow, I love that. I love that so much. So how do you feel like, and we're going to come to a close in just a moment, how do you feel like you have been showing up as an advocate in this space now, knowing what you know now, seeing, the challenges that your dad went through, you have been going through with transition to the farm, like how do you feel like you're advocating now as a black farmer?
Yeah, so so even prior to this, when there would be, kind of those black farming petitions or online things, I'll try to drop in or sign on to. Now I've been more active in some of the online groups that they have on Facebook, which is, as much as folks feel like Facebook and the meta is dying, folks who do social media and are of an older age, that's where they go. Yeah, they go
on
to Facebook.
There. They all on there. I can tell you because my whole family on Facebook. They on there, and there's a huge black farming community on Facebook.
Yeah. And so just being tapped into to how they're either organizing in person, online. Some of those same petitions, donations, planning to go to some workshops and some conferences to convene with folks, and then through my job at the Hip Hop Caucus, we have an entire portfolio of work on economic justice. We've done things around USDA discrimination in support of black farmers, and so anytime we had a meeting with somebody from the EPA. So anytime I'm in a room with somebody or on a call with somebody, and anything around agriculture, farming, it comes up. Like I'm using my voice at that time to say, hey, I'm a black farmer, and this is what's happening with black farmers in Mississippi with the elder. I was on a call last week with a group of folks from FEMA who were talking about resilient stories, and part of what we brought up was that technological gap that was happening, and how when you have federal disaster response, what it looks like to make sure that you're including those people when you have your QR code and you have your Bitly link and you have your text to give and all of that. So just any and every way I possibly can, at every opportunity I can, I don't waste space.
Ooh, I like that. Brittney says she don't waste space, y'all. That's a t-shirt. So Brittney, one of the things that I'm known for on every episode, when someone says a catchphrase and it just resonates, I will literally say that's a t-shirt. Okay. You know what?
Space.
I'm going to just create a whole marketplace for y'all phrases, and y'all get y'all money. We're gonna set this up. We're gonna set this up.
Give me a percentage I can donate to Black farmers.
Hey, hello. We're gonna make this happen because it's just too many of these awesome phrases y'all be throwing. So listen, Brittney, I would love to be a fly on the wall when you are in a space and you tell folks you're a farmer, you know, and it's because, like you were saying, like, you know, there's this expectation of what a farmer's supposed to look like, right? You know, so Black woman, Mississippi, affectionately known as the SIP, as I like to call it, went to Howard. Got to shout out Howard, okay? You know, a senior communications professional, but a farmer, you know, and so that to me is so powerful, and I'm pretty sure that you know, even your current work, you know, you've been able to use that, you know, to support the daily operations of, you know, being a farmer, and just again being able to call out things that, you know, agencies or like the USDA may not think about. And even like those small things that people think are small, they're really huge. Like a QR code is huge. Yeah. Not everyone has access to a laptop or let alone knows how to use it. God knows. I love my dad.
My dad, that man,
he
on that little flip phone.
That's it, you know, but that is a real thing. And so just being able to be in that space and point that out, like that's huge value. That's huge value. Gosh, there's so much more that we can talk about, but I'm going to invite you back. Would you be open to coming back, Britt?
Yeah, I would love to come back.
Awesome. And we got to have you in on Cousin Chat.
Yes. And then maybe my dad is supposed to be coming up next year.
Nice.
For my son's high school graduation. So
oh my goodness.
Maybe both of us, because he, you know, the elders, they're
I can kick it all
also
day.
Very funny.
Yes, I know. My 80-year-old grandmother called me last night from Mississippi, just shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
And you love them, and you just hold on to them. And because they have so much knowledge, you know, so much knowledge. I can't even tell you how many times, like, I just listened to my grandmother tell me over and over again about her upbringing and growing up on the land. And even till this day, like, we'll hop in the car. She'll take me to a persimmon tree, like off the random street in Jackson. And we just, like, I hold on to that. So thank you. But thank you so much, Brittney, for sharing your story. I never want to leave the show, okay, without, you know, my wonderful guest just sharing an edible act that anybody can take today. You know, if this story was resonating to you, or, you know, you may find yourself in a similar situation, or not even necessarily like the exact storyline, but, you know, you may want to get more in tune with the land and just do some research or what have you. I don't know where you guys are in this space, but I just want Brittney just to share like a nugget. Like if she could share anything with the listener just to inspire and encourage them, like I want you to go ahead and share that.
Yeah. So prior to this conversation, my nugget was do your due diligence on making sure you know you have an assessment of what type of property, whether it's land or home ownership, that is in your family, and then making sure that there is a plan, some type of plan of succession, whether that's living or in death. And then don't think that it's too much or too big for, you know, if somebody needs you to take it on, or will be helpful, when I say need, but it would be helpful for you to take on while you're living, to do so. But now that we've had this conversation, my nugget's
that's still important, though. So you get two. That is important. That is so important. Yes.
It's don't waste space. So we all are in different spaces in our jobs, in our personal lives, in community. And so if there is something that you are passionate about that can help move our collective plight forward, then don't waste that space. Make sure that you speak up and you share your story. It's very powerful.
That is awesome. Brittney, if no one has told you today that you are doing a phenomenal job, I am here to tell you. I really salute you and appreciate you for being a voice and being a champion of this work. And I have certainly been inspired, and I know that this has been an inspiration for all of our listeners. And so just flowers to you.
Did anybody tell you how phenomenal you are
Oh,
for having
having
this space and consistently having it? You know, but a lot of times people start these podcasts and, you know, you don't hear from them for a while, and, you know, years have passed since the last thing. But to be committed, and this is not even out of a passion and a love for it, I think is a showcase of your phenomenalness as well. And so I'm very fond of Mississippi lineage.
Yes.
And I think that we are all extremely powerful and extremely advocacy and community driven in our DNA. And so shout out to Tasha for connecting us.
Yes, Tasha. I love that girl.
And I'm very honored to be here with you as well.
Thank you. That meant a lot. That meant a lot to me. I really appreciate that. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. You can find today's episode on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts as well. And this will be uploaded to YouTube. Be sure to follow at Food Talks in Color on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And until next time, thank y'all again. Peace.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in. You can catch today's episode on iTunes, Spotify, and Simplecast. And be sure to follow us at Food Talks in Color, that's just the letter N, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And did you know we are on Patreon? This is a way for you to take action and support our mission of amplifying BIPOC voices on the Edible Activist podcast. Visit patreon.com/Food Talks in Color to learn more. Peace and blessings, and remember, in the great words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture.